outside it's snowing, so at least we can relish some pictures. Drishtva
दृष्ट्वा
Astra
अस्त्र
Tejaha
तेजः
Tu
तु
Tayoho
तयोः
Drishtva Tejastu Tayos
दृष्ट्वास्त्रतेजस्तु तयोः
Drishtva Tejastu Tayos
दृष्ट्वास्त्रतेजस्तु तयोः
Threen
श्री
Lokan
लोकान्
Pradahan
प्रदहन्
Mahat
महत्
Threen Lokan Pradahan Mahat
त्रिलोकान् प्रदहन् महत्
Threen Lokan Pradahan Mahat
त्रिलोकान् प्रदहन् महत्
Dahyamanaha
दह्यमानाः
Prajaha
प्रजाः
Sarvaha
सर्वाः
Dahyamanaha Prajaha Sarvaha
दह्यमानः प्रजाः सर्वाः
Dahyamanaha Prajaha Sarvaha
दह्यमानः प्रजाः सर्वाः
Samvartakam
सांवर्तक
Amansata
अमंसत
Samvartakam Amansata
सांवर्तकम् अमंसत
Samvartakam Amansata
सांवर्तकम् अमंसत
Drishtva Tejastu Tayos
दृष्ट्वास्त्रतेजस्तु तयोः
Trilokan Pradahan Mahat
त्रिलोकान् प्रदहन् महत्
Dahyamanaha Prajaha Sarvaha
दह्यमानाः प्रजा सर्वाः
Samvartakam Amansata
सांवर्तकम् अमंसत
Drishtva Tejastu Tayos
दृष्ट्वास्त्रतेजस्तु तयोः
Trilokan Pradahan Mahat
त्रिलोकान् प्रदहन् महत्
Dahyamanaha Prajaha Sarvaha
दह्यमानाः प्रजा सर्वाः
Samvartakam Amansata
सांवर्तकम् अमंसत दृष्ट्वास्त्रतेजस्तु तयोः त्रिलोकान् प्रदहन् महत् दह्यमानः प्रजा सर्वाः सांवर्तकम् अमंसत
दृष्ट्वास्त्रतेजस्तु तयोस्
दृष्ट्वास्त्रतेजस्तु तयोस्
त्रिलोकान् प्रदहन् महत्
त्रिलोकान् प्रदहन् महत्
दह्यमाना प्रजाः सर्वाः
दह्यमाना प्रजा सर्वाः
सांवर्तकम् अमंसतः
सांवर्तकम् अमंसत दृष्ट्वास्त्रतेजस्तु तयोस्
त्रैलोकान् प्रदहन् महत्
त्रिलोकान् प्रदहन् महत्
दह्यमानः प्रजा सर्वः
दह्यमानाः प्रजा सर्वाः
संवर्तकम् अमंसत
सांवर्तकम् अमंसत
Mataji.
दृष्ट्वास्त्रतेजस्तु तयोस्
दृष्ट्वास्त्रतेजस्तु तयोस्
त्रिलोकान् प्रदहन् महत्
त्रिलोकान् प्रदहन् महत्
दह्यमानाः प्रजाः सर्वाः
दह्यमाना प्रजा सर्वाः
सांवर्तकम् अमंसत
सांवर्तकम् अमंसत
दृष्ट्वास्त्रतेजस्तु तयोस्
दृष्ट्वास्त्रतेजस्तु तयोस्
त्रिलोकान् प्रदहन् महत्
त्रिलोकान् प्रदहन् महत्
दह्यमानाः प्रजाः सर्वाः
दह्यमानाः प्रजा सर्वाः
सांवर्तकम् अमंसत
सांवर्तकम् अमंसत
Drishtva
दृष्ट्वा
Thus seeing
thus seeing
Astra
अस्त्र
Weapon
weapon
Tejaha
तेजः
Heat
heat
Tu
to
But
but
Tayoho
तयोः
Of both
of both
Threen
three
Three Lokan
लोकान् planets
Pradahat
प्रदहत् blazing
Mahat
महत्
Severely
severely
Dahyamanaha
दह्यमानाः
Burning Prajaha
प्रजाः
Population
Sarvaha
Sarvaha all over Samvartakam
सांवर्तकम्
the name of the fire
the name of the fire
which devastates
which devastates
during the annihilation of the universe.
during the annihilation of the universe.
Amansata
Amam Sata
began to think.
began to think.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada.
Jai Srila Prabhupada.
All the population of the three worlds was scorched by the combined heat of the weapons. Everyone was reminded of the Samvartaka fire which takes place at the time of annihilation. Kindly repeat. All the population
All the population
of the three worlds
of the three worlds
was scorched
by
the combined heat
the combined heat
of the weapons.
of the weapons.
Everyone was reminded
Everyone was reminded
of the Samvartaka fire
of the Samvartaka fire
which takes place
at
the time of annihilation.
the time of annihilation.
Purport by Srila Prabhupada.
Jai Srila Prabhupada.
The three worlds are the upper, lower and the intermediate planets of the universe. Although the Brahmastra was released on this earth, the heat produced by the combination of both weapons covered all the universe, and all the populations on all the different planets began to feel the heat excessively and compared it with that of the Samvartaka fire. No planet is, therefore, without living beings, as less intelligent materialistic men think. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanachalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Namavo Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mokam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langhayate Girim Yat Kripatamaham Mande Shri Gurum Dinataranam. A few years back, the Pope, who is the topmost religious head for the Catholic Christians, Roman Catholics. So he is a very respected person, considered the highest personality in the religious world of the Christians. He made a statement that Big Bang theory and the Darwin's theory are true. And as far as the Christian theology goes, all along until his time, until the Pope's time, until he made this statement, the understanding was that God created Adam and Eve, and from them we know how the apple and all those kind of stuff, and that's how creation happened. So he said God is not to be considered a magician to create things like that. He created something and then allowed nature to evolve, and that is how the Big Bang happened, and the evolution as given by Darwin. All those things happened in due course of time. God allowed nature to take its own course. So why did he make this statement? Because there has been increasing pressure from the scientific world in terms of various theories, evidences that they have been presenting in favor of this Big Bang theory and the Darwin's theory. Of course, the fact is that both of them have not been proved with irrefutable evidence. That is not a fact, but by and large, the majority of the scientific community at least, they believe that these two theories actually explain how creation happened. Again, even within the scientific world, they are a divided lot. There are some people who present all kinds of evidence which refutes these two theories, but majority of the scientists, they are under the impression that these two theories actually explain how creation happened and evolved to the stage where we are today. Now, because this section of the scientists are very vocal and they have been very critical of the Christian theology, their theory of creation, the Pope was forced to make a statement like this, so that a common ground can be achieved between the theory of God creating this whole thing and the theory that things have evolved naturally on their own. So he wanted to find a synthesis or a combination of both, which can, from the believer's point of view, it can explain how the theory that God created this whole world can be reconciled with the scientist's explanation of how creation happened. So we can see like this, many modern so-called spiritualists and religious heads, they tend to go with the flow of whatever current perceptions are there, and they try to somehow fit into the people's whatever is the popular notions and their values in the current day society. But if we look at Prabhupada was never like that. You look at the statement that Prabhupada is making in the purport here. No planet is therefore without living beings, as less intelligent materialistic men think, directly taking on the scientists. The scientists are always saying only the earth has intelligent living entities. Forget intelligent, only the earth has life. No other planet supports life, whether it is the sun, the moon, Jupiter, Mars, etc. And they have published photographs of the Apollo mission, which went and landed on the moon, and they have taken photographs of all that and published that. They are saying there is not even water available on these planets, etc., etc. And the kind of atmosphere that is there is not conducive for life. And look at Prabhupada. Prabhupada is not trying to adjust, trying to go with the common popular notion of how the world is and what constitutes this material world, how the creation has happened. Prabhupada never compromised. Look at Prabhupada's confidence. Prabhupada is saying only less intelligent materialists think that there is no life on other planets. Imagine this, it's a revolutionary statement. If some scientist reads this, he will go bonkers. You think we are less materialistic, less intelligent people? We have so much advanced, so much. We have telescopes, we have satellites, we have so many things, and you are saying that we are less intelligent? Prabhupada is saying, yes, you are less intelligent because you are not able to comprehend a simple, very common sense logic. And what is that common sense logic Prabhupada is talking of? As the Vedic scriptures talk of, they talk of all the living entities as sarvagataha. And here, of course, the same thing is being mentioned, how when Arjuna's and Ashwatthama's Brahmastras came and clashed with each other. This was the background, of course, is that Ashwatthama released a Brahmastra weapon to protect himself, to defend himself against Arjuna. And Arjuna, having no other alternative, had to counter that Brahmastra with another Brahmastra. So these two Brahmastras, when they collided, what happened was, it created a great heat, a scorching heat, a blazing heat, which Dakhyamanaha, Treen Lokan Pradahan. It was the blazing heat was burning all the three worlds. And Sarvaha Samartakam Amansata, all the personalities, all the living entities in all the three planetary systems, they thought, oh, looks like the time of annihilation has arrived. Because at the time of annihilation, the sun will become 12 times hotter than it is right now. So you can imagine, of course, right now in Boston we are having, it is snowing, but imagine during summertime, and that too you take some place like India, some place like Vrindavan, during May, June, the temperatures go to 48 degrees centigrade. That is when the sun is at 1x, at its normal power. And imagine 12 times the heat. That means almost 600 degrees centigrade will be the temperature at that time. Can you imagine what will be happening? Everything will be vaporizing. No living entities can survive. So the kind of heat that was generated was similar to the kind of heat that people would experience at the time of annihilation. That is called, at the time of annihilation, the heat is called the Samvartaka fire. So, and then of course, after a long period of time, there will be huge amount of rain, and finally everything will get inundated. These are all the explanations given in the Bhagavatam about how annihilation will happen at the end of Brahma's lifespan, which will take several millions of years, billions and trillions of years. So similarly, when the two Brahmastras collided, although the event happened on the earth, still the heat generated by the two Brahmastras was almost enough to consume all the three planetary systems. So all the people in all the three planetary systems, when the heat increased tremendously, they thought, of course, it was not to the extent of the actual Samvartaka fire, but still, because the heat increased tremendously and people could not figure out what is the reason behind this sudden increase in the heat, they thought maybe the time for annihilation has come. So Krishna also tells in the Bhagavad Gita that Achedyoyam adahyoyam akledyo ashoshya evacha nityah sarvagatah sthanur achaloyam sanatanaha. So the living entities are described, the nature of the living entity of the soul, Krishna in describing in the Bhagavad Gita, he explains that the living entity is achedya. It cannot be cut into pieces. Cheda means to cut, to fragment. And achedya means something which cannot be cut into pieces. Achedyoyam adahyoyam, as it is stated here, dahyamanaha. Dahana means to burn. Adahyaha means which cannot be burnt. Adahyaha means which cannot be burnt. Achedyoyam adahyoyam. The soul, the nature of the soul is it cannot be burnt. The body can be burnt, but the soul cannot be burnt. Adahyoyam akledyoyam. It cannot be the akledyo ashoshyo. The soul cannot be wetted, it cannot be dried, it cannot be cut into pieces, it cannot be burnt. That means none of the five elements, earth, water, fire, air and space, none of these can actually impact the soul. They cannot touch the soul. The soul is made up of a completely different matter altogether. The constitutional, what makes up the constitution of the soul is completely different from the material world, and what we see in this material world, including our own bodies, are comprised of earth, water, fire, air and space. But the soul is not made up of any of these, and so therefore it cannot be wetted, it cannot be dried, it cannot be burnt, it cannot be cut into pieces. None of these things is possible. And nityaha, the soul is eternal. Unlike the body which can be destroyed, the soul is eternal. Nityaha and sthanuhu, the soul is unchangeable. The soul, why is the soul unchangeable? Because the qualities of the soul cannot be changed. The soul is eternally a portion of the Supreme Lord. As Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Mamaivamso jivaloke jivabhota sanatanaha. Eternally the living entities are part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. The soul can never become the Supreme Brahman. Unlike what the impersonalists state, that after you acquire knowledge, then you can become liberated, and when you become liberated, you become the Supreme Brahman, or you merge into the Supreme Brahman, which according to the statement of the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna says that the living entity is sthanu, its quality cannot be changed. It is eternally part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, eternally a servant, an individual soul. And then sthanu sarvagataha, the living entity is sarvagata. When Krishna says sarvagataha, that the living entity is sarvagataha means spread everywhere. It can be understood in several ways. One meaning of sarvagataha is that Krishna, in one of the previous verses, he has stated that the consciousness of the soul is spread all over the body. So the living entity, when it said that it is sarvagataha, means it pervades the entire body. And another meaning of sarvagataha is you can find the living entities everywhere. Whether you go deep into the ocean, or you go on the surface of the earth, or you go into the desert and dig under the sand, or you look at fire itself, within all of these the living entities are there. And not only within this planet, they are spread across all other planets also, including on the sun. So currently when we look at human beings, the human being's body are mainly made up of earth and water. These are the two main components of a human body. And so this human body is suited for living on earth. Now if you take a human being and put it into the water, he can swim for some time, he can manage to survive for some time, but he cannot for his whole life live in the water. So people go surfing, people go swimming, all these things for leisure, but he can do it for a few minutes, for a few hours maximum. Even an hour is not easy. So, but then for a whole life you live in the water, if you tell the human being, he cannot. He has to come back on the land. But then within the water there are aquatics, which for their whole life they live in the water. You cannot bring the aquatics on the land. If you bring them on the land, they will die. So the bodies, according to what they are made up of, they are suitable for living in different conditions, which we see within this earth itself. So if the living entity is having a body which is suitable, then the living entity can live on the sun also, it can live on the moon also, it can live on Jupiter, Mars, everywhere. So therefore, Srila Prabhupada mentions that if we look at this earth planet, we can find that the living entities are spread everywhere. No point, no space on the earth is available where no living entities are there. Everywhere living entities are there. You go to the Arctic area, you go to the poles, so much ice is covering the whole place, glaciers, filled with glaciers. But you go under the glacier, inside the water you go, you will find living entities. Even on the surface of the glaciers, there are so many Eskimos who are living there, human beings, along with reindeer and polar bears and penguins and all kinds of animals you can find there. So living entities are within this earth spread everywhere. Therefore, according to this, using our common sense and logic, we can understand that living entities must be spread, must be there in all other planets also. And another understanding of the word sarvagataha is that the living entity can go wherever he wants. According to our conception, according to our understanding, the human beings are limited to the travel within the earth. Human beings cannot travel beyond the earth. If they have to go beyond the earth, then they need special space suits, they need satellites, they need to create an artificial atmosphere within the satellite where there is oxygen and all kinds of facilities to be able to go into outer space. But according to the Vedic scriptures, if one has developed certain yogic powers, he can travel to different kinds of planetary systems. When Ambarish Maharaj and Durvasa Muni had an altercation, at that time Durvasa Muni travelled all over the universe. He went to Brahmaloka, he went to Indraloka, he went to Kailasa, he went to even the Vaikuntha within this material world. So within the same body he was able to travel everywhere because of his mystic power. So it is possible for the living entity to go wherever he wants, provided he has certain capabilities, certain abilities if he has acquired. The living entity can travel anywhere. And if the living entity wants, he can go from this material world to the spiritual world, which is beyond the material manifestation. So if the living entity wants, he can qualify himself and he can go there. So the living entity can travel anywhere within this universe, provided he qualifies himself for such travel. So this is another understanding of the word Sarvagataha. And finally, when the impersonalist state that the spiritual realm is a place where there are no varieties, there are no living entities, there is only one Nirakar Brahman, there is a formless Brahman which is there. But Krishna is saying Sarvagataha, the living entities are there everywhere, which means the living entities are there on the they are there in the material world also, they are there in the spiritual world also. So even in the spiritual world, there are living entities and there are varieties. In fact, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that this material manifestation is compared to a Ashwatha tree, to a banyan tree, which is upside down. Urdhamulam adashakam. The roots are upward and the branches are downward. So where can we see a tree with its root upward in the air and all the branches towards the earth? If we go to a river bank, we can look at the reflection of the tree within the river water, and there we can see in the reflection the tree is turned upside down. So why Krishna is giving this example is to make us to understand that this material manifestation is a perverted reflection of the spiritual world. So therefore, whatever varieties are there in the spiritual world are reflected here also. So it is not that the material world is full of varieties, but the spiritual world has no varieties. No. If we go by the logic given by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is saying this material world is a reflection. Reflection means in the original world there must be real varieties, unlike the temporary Maya varieties which are available within this material manifestation. So in fact, we can see the description given in the Bhagavatam about how Vaikuntha looks like, what kind of varieties are there, and the kind of beautiful personalities that are there. It's a beautiful description. In fact, even in the Bhagavatam in the 10th canto, when the gopis were searching for Krishna, who left them before the beginning of the rasa dance. So one of the things, the gopis were submitting several prayers in great separation to Krishna. So the gopis were going around in the forest looking for Krishna. Where is Krishna? Where is Krishna? And when they were searching for Krishna like this, they looked at all the trees and the creepers and the plants, which were all laden with fruits and flowers, and they were all bending down because of the weight. Looking at them, the gopis said, Vanalatas tarava atmani vishnum vyanjayantiva pushpa phaladhyaha. All these trees and the creepers and the plants, phaladhyaha, they are laden, they are completely loaded with flowers and fruits. Pushpa phala adhyaha. Pushpa, flower, and phala, fruits. They are overloaded with these fruits and flowers, and because of that, they are bending down. And why are they bending down? Atmani Vishnum. They want to offer their obeisances to Krishna. And not only that, Prema Hrishta Tanavo. They are overcome with love for Krishna. And because of their excessive love for Krishna, the ecstasy that they are experiencing in love of Krishna, all these plants, creepers and trees, what are they doing? The Vitapa, the trees, Madhudaraha Vavrushuhu Sma, they are showering, they are pouring showers of honey everywhere. And everywhere we can see honey dripping from the trees. So the gopis are saying that in the spiritual world, even the trees and plants and creepers are are experiencing great ecstasy for Krishna, and they are offering their flowers, their fruits, and the honey on the trees at the lotus feet of Krishna for his service, for his pleasure. So unlike this material world where the living entities, the varieties are born out of jada vastu, out of unconscious matter, and if we look at trees and plants within the material world, their consciousness is very, very subdued. Yesterday when I was coming from the airport to here, in the car I was looking at along the sides of the roads, tall trees which are standing and they are completely covered with snow. Imagine for us when we have to go out, we want to wear a jacket, we want a cap, we want to put gloves, socks and thermal wear and all that stuff. Because why? Because the cold is biting. We cannot tolerate. But look at the trees. Their consciousness is so subdued, they are covered with snow and they are simply standing. They have no feeling of the pain, of the distress of biting cold. And during summer, the sun will beat down upon them and they will keep standing like that. During rainy season, water will be poured upon them, they will keep standing. Whereas we, because our consciousness is developed, when there is a sun, we will try to walk in the shade. When there is rain, we will try to hold an umbrella. And when it's bitter cold, we will wear jackets and we will have heaters and all that kind of stuff to reduce our distress. Whereas plants and trees, their consciousness is so subdued, they have no feeling towards all these things. But that is in the material world. In the spiritual world, even the plants and trees are fully conscious. And they are also saying, oh, Krishna is coming. Let me offer my fruits and flowers at Krishna's lotus feet. Let me offer the honey which the bees have built on my branches. Let me shower that honey on Krishna. You see how the spiritual world is a complete opposite of the material world. Here all the varieties that we see are all of Jadavastu. They have no consciousness. Even the body which we possess is actually a dead body. As long as we are within this body, the body is walking, talking and acting, and it's active and it's working. The moment the soul leaves this body, the body will start decaying and it will no longer be active. So we are actually occupying a dead body and we are walking around and thinking that the body is living. The body is simply a dead matter. So all the varieties of personalities we look at in this material world, all the different bodies that we see of human beings, animals, plants, aquatics, etc., they are all actually Jadavastu. They are all varieties made out of matter. And when the Mayavadis look at the varieties which are generated out of matter, they think spiritual world there cannot be any matter, so no variety. But the reality is something else. The reality is that in the spiritual world, original variety is there. Trees are there, plants are there, aquatics are there, birds are there, human beings are there, but none of them none of their consciousness is less developed in any manner. All of them are full of love for Krishna and they are all conscious that they have to serve Krishna with everything at their disposal. So this is the difference between the spiritual world and the material world. And so therefore, a devotee is not bewildered by the variety which he sees in the material world. Whatever variety he sees in the material world, he is able to actually understand that this variety is simply a reflection of the variety in the spiritual world, and the living entities are there in the material world. They are spread all over the material world according to their different karmas, and they are present even in the spiritual world. Even the spiritual world, actually the real variety is in the spiritual world. This material world is a poor reflection of the variety available in the spiritual world. So a devotee is able to understand and comprehend these things, he is able to perceive these things, and so he is not under any illusion that the living entities are only on the earth, what we can see with our eyes, and they are only, and according to the materialist point of view, and according to the point of view of the Mayavadis, the impersonalists, the entire cosmic material manifestation is the only realm of varieties of living entities, and the spiritual world is free from all living entities. This is what a Mayavadi thinks. A materialist thinks that only on the earth planet there are living entities. A modern materialist. Whereas there are materialists even in the Vedic times. They would know that there are varieties within this material world, and there are living entities even in the Swargaloka, upper planetary systems. And they would undergo various varieties of punya karma and yajnas and all those kind of things to elevate themselves to Swargaloka. At least they were a little better. They knew that there are living entities on other planets also. But modern materialists don't even have that much vision. They think living entities means only the earth. So the devotee doesn't ascribe to any of these. He is not under the illusion that living entities are only on the earth, or only within this material universe, or only within this material manifestation. He knows living entities are there everywhere. Sarvagataha. They are there everywhere within this material universe, within this material manifestation, as well as in the spiritual world. And the living entities in the spiritual world will retain their individuality for the service of Krishna. So therefore, a devotee always tries to engage every variety that is available in the material world in the service of Krishna, and by doing so, the living entity can purify himself and become eligible to go back to the supreme spiritual world, Vaikuntha, and there he can experience the real variety in service of Krishna. So I'll stop here. If anybody has any question or points for discussion, we can discuss. Yes, please.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
All glories to Prabhupada.
Thank you for the class. So you stated, I'm still trying to figure this out, so if the question is incoherent at all, I apologize in advance. So you said that the soul is unchangeable and eternal. However, if we make it, or not however, when we make it, if we make it to the spiritual world, we have a spiritual body which is non-different from the soul. So if the soul is unchangeable, but then later on, if we successfully finish Krishna consciousness, we have a spiritual body which is not different from the soul. I'm wondering, what is the relationship between the soul and the spiritual body now, like when we're on earth?
Okay. Prabhupada says that in the present condition, our spiritual body is unmanifest. Unmanifest in the sense we are not able to perceive it, we are not able to see it. But the spiritual body is always there. And because the spiritual body is there, the material body is made to fit the spiritual body. Prabhupada gives the example of a dress. Why does my kurta have 2 arms? Why not 3 or 4 arms? Or why not only 1 arm? Because I have 2 arms, and so therefore the kurta is made to fit my 2 arms. So similarly, this material body is also like a dress for the soul. So the material body, the dress of the material body is put over the spiritual body. And so therefore, our material body has also 2 hands, 2 eyes, etc., because our spiritual body possesses those features. So now the question comes that when I transmigrate from this body to another body, I will get an animal body, then what about that? There also, so what we have to understand is, unlike this material body which is limited, it can the different parts, the different limbs of this material body are limited to function in a specific way. I can see with my eyes, I can taste with my tongue, but I cannot see with my tongue or taste with my eyes. So the body is limited. And another limitation of the body is that once this body has taken a certain form, it cannot change its form. If you have to change the form, you have to take on another body. That is how within this life itself, we change so many bodies. The body of the child, the body of the young man, the body of the old man, these are all different bodies. But we have to understand that material nature is mimicking the spiritual world. In the spiritual world, a living entity can take any form he desires. The spiritual body is not limited like the material body. according to the relationship we have with Krishna, we can change the form of our spiritual body. So in this material world, because this material world is mimicking the spiritual world, but at the same time the material body cannot transform, cannot change its form. So what happens? You are given different bodies, but given in such a way that you assume that you are growing, and you are the experience that you get is that your body is changing, but your body is not changing. You are getting different bodies. So in the spiritual world, the living entity's spiritual body is such that it can take any shape it wants. So when the living entity by his karma has to transmigrate from the human body to some animal body, the spiritual body will take a shape, and over that the animal body will be put to the living entity. So the living entity's spiritual body is always there. Only thing is, it may be manifest in certain circumstances, it is unmanifest in certain circumstances. When we go back to the spiritual world, our spiritual body will again become manifest. In fact, even within this material universe, if we become pure devotees, then our material body will transform into our spiritual body. And so therefore, that is why when we look at the spiritual master, because the spiritual master like Srila Prabhupada is a pure devotee, his body is not material, it is spiritual. So as far as the living entity is concerned, within this material universe, his spiritual body is unmanifest, his spiritual senses are unmanifest. Unmanifest, when we say that the spiritual senses are unmanifest, it means the spiritual senses are sleeping, they are dormant, they are not active. And when the living entity becomes a pure devotee, then his senses again become active, then he is able to see Krishna, talk to him, he is able to converse with him, he is able to serve him directly. Like we have Gaur-Nitai deities here. So to our eyes it appears like material form of Gaur and Nitai, and we are not on the platform where we can converse with them. But the same deities, when we become pure devotees, when we reach the stage of Krishna Prema, we will be able to talk to Gaur-Nitai. The same Gaur-Nitai will speak to them, and they will speak to us. So why we are able to do it now? Why we are able to do it when we are pure devotees and now we are not able to do? Because currently our spiritual senses are sleeping, they are dormant, and our spiritual body is unmanifest. So when we become pure devotees, again the spiritual body will become active, our spiritual senses will become active, and then we will be able to see everything of the spiritual nature. So that is how we have to understand. So there is no change of the soul happening, it is only the consciousness which is changing. In our material consciousness, we are not able to see the spiritual body, we are not able to see the spiritual form of Krishna, we are not able to hear his spiritual words, we are not able to feel his spiritual presence. Whereas when our consciousness changes, in the sense that our consciousness becomes purified and becomes free from the material contamination, then our spiritual body, our spiritual senses, everything will awaken and it will again become manifest. That is how we have to understand. Is that okay? Yes. Hare Krishna. Anybody else? So we'll stop here. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki